What's up, gang? Kevin here, and today we're going to talk about Excel. This is Santa Rosa Junior College Wine Studies Online, so let's get to it. Here's Excel. If you're familiar with it at all, you know that the body of the Excel spreadsheet or worksheet is right down here, and in that we record numbers, manipulate numbers. That's what these are designed for. The top here is pretty familiar probably if you've used Microsoft Word. It's got a whole lot of commands that you can choose from up there. So let's say we finished fermenting Pinot Noir, and every day we kept track of the Brix levels during fermentation as the Brix levels came down, and we want to put that information in a spreadsheet and create a little chart to show us the pace at which the fermentation progressed. So let's go ahead and do that. So in cell A1, which is highlighted here, I'll go ahead and type date. Alright, I just hit enter, and now it says date in that cell, and the cursor, the highlighted cell, moves to the next cell down. You'll see if I go back and highlight cell A1, and the columns are labeled across the top with letters. The rows are labeled down the side with numbers. So this would be A1 at the top. Up above that, you see there's a little box that says A1 that tells you what's highlighted. And then to the right of that, there's a box that says date. Tells you what the contents of that box. There are a couple icons here, and we'll talk about one of those in just a sec. Okay, so now we've got the date. And say in column 2 we're going to put the degrees Brix. I'll just call it Brix, so type in Brix and hit enter. And again, the cursor moves to the next cell below. Now I'm going to put in my dates. So let's say we started this fermentation on September 25th of 2014. So if I do 9/25/14 and I hit enter, Excel's smart enough to know that's a date, and it goes ahead and formats that cell as a date and puts it in. And then I could put in the next cell. My cursor's moved down. I could put in 9/26/2014, hit enter, and again Excel puts that number in. Now I could type this all the way down, but that's a lot of work, especially if you had months and months of data. Excel makes it a lot easier. All you have to do is when you're in that A4 in this case is highlighted, when you're in that cell, you hit the equals sign, and then you hit the up arrow. And you see how Excel has put A3 into that open cell A4. It says equals A3, and now we can manipulate the data that's in A3. In this case, what do we want to do? We want to add 1 day to the data in A3. So I just hit +1. Excel's smart enough to know that if A3 is a date, it's going to add 1 day to that. So when I hit enter, it adds 1 day and goes ahead and formats cell A4 as a date and puts the resulting date in there. So I could do that all the way down too, right? I could hit equals in A5, hit the up arrow and highlight A4. I hit the plus sign 1, hit enter, and I've got the date. So it's slightly easier than typing it in all the way down, but still, if we had to do this for months of data, it would take forever. Excel gives us a shortcut. So if we go back to A5, you'll see in the lower right hand corner of that cell there's a little square box. So the cell's outlined in green, there's a little square box in the lower right corner. So I take my cursor here, which is bouncing around and is this flat arrow. As I mouse over that square box, my little cursor turns to a skinny, not an arrow, it was a fat plus sign, turns to a skinny plus sign. If I left click and I drag down and then I release the left click, Excel copies the formula that was in A5 to all the cells that I highlighted. So if I went down to A14 and highlighted that now, you'll see that Excel has put the same formula in A13 +1, same formula I had in A5. Back in A5 it said A4 +1, but Excel takes that formula and copies the same logic all the way down. So it's a real easy way to put enter a string of numbers or to copy a formula down. Okay, so we got the dates in there. Now let's enter our bricks numbers. These you have to input because they're going to change every day, of course. Say we started at 25 bricks and fermentation started slowly. We went 24 and 23, and then fermentation really started to pick up. And then we shaved off 5 bricks on day 4, so we went to 18 from 23. Another 5 bricks on the 5th day, another 5 bricks on the 6th day, and then we started to slow down a little bit, and we're dry at the end on October 7th. So that's a fairly slow Pinot Noir fermentation, probably about the pace we'd like. Pinot Noir, if left unchecked, often ferments very quickly, but this was relatively slow, and we took 13 days in this case. All right, so we're good. We've got our data in the spreadsheet. Now we can save that and store the data. But as I mentioned earlier, we want to do a little chart to track our progress. Very easy in Excel to make a chart. So just highlight all the data. Just left click and highlight. Oops. So I'm in A1, I left click and I highlight all the data, release the left click, and now I've got all the data highlighted. If I go to the Insert tab up at the top here, so I'm way up at the top, there's the Home tab I'm on now. I'll go to the Insert tab and I'll say Insert a Chart. So it has recommended charts, and then it has a bunch of chart types over here, and you can click on any of these icons to select a chart. I'm going to select this one because I want a line, and look, when I mouse over that, Excel goes ahead and puts in a sample of what the chart will look like. That looks great. So let's select. I just release the left click over that icon, and it goes ahead and inserts this chart. And we could make this bigger. We can do a lot of things to format it. Up here, where it says Chart Tools, there are lots of choices. And if the Chart Tools choices will always appear if the chart is highlighted. If I click outside the chart, you see the Chart Tools go away. Click back in and Chart Tools show up at the top. So look at my y-axis here. I've got all my degrees bricks values on that y-axis, but I don't identify what those numbers are. So we'd want to put in an axis title there. How you do that is go up to the top and look around for choices. Well, I happen to know that that choice is under Chart Elements. So I click on that, brings down a menu here of axis titles. And I'll click on Primary Vertical Title, and it puts in that title, and it's highlighted. As long as it's highlighted, if I type on it, I can just, if I type degrees bricks, you'll see that the box up above contains degrees bricks, and if I hit enter, it goes ahead and is input in the axis title. And I can format that title and do a lot of things. So you can play with that. I won't do that today, but you've pretty much got an idea how that goes. Okay, so that was our first project, recording our fermentation data. Now let's do another project. For the other project, I was out in the vineyard today. I had 5 samplers out in one vineyard sampling the bricks readings for Cabernet Sauvignon. And I want to see how close those readings are to one another, and I want to get an average of those readings. So I'm going to need another worksheet. So I could open a new file, or I could just put another worksheet in this same Excel file. So if you see down at the bottom here, you see where it says Sheet 1. If I double click on Sheet 1, I can change the name of that. So I'm going to change it and call the Sheet 1 Pinot Noir, because that was my Pinot Noir data. And I hit enter, and it changes the name. If I want to add another worksheet in the same Excel file, I just click this plus tab here, and there's a new worksheet, nice and blank, ready to go. And I'm going to double click on the sheet name, and I'm going to call this Cab Sauv, and now I've got my data together. Pinot Noir was fermentation data. In this case, I'm talking about vineyard sampling data, but I may very well want to keep all of one harvest's data together. So that's what I'm going to do, just put it on a separate worksheet. So let me go ahead and input the data, and I'm going to say in column 1 I'm going to call it person, and I'm going to put in the initials of all the people who input this, who did the sampling in the vineyard, and I'll put their bricks readings in column 2. So LK got a bricks reading of 24.5. SS took a sample and they got 23, so a bit different. RD took a sample and they got 25 even. LS got 22.8 and MA got 23.8. Okay, so they all took a sample and then they tested the bricks and that's what they got. So let's get an average of that. A couple of ways to do that in Excel. I'll do it the long way first. In that case, you hit an equal sign, just like we did before when we were inputting a formula on the Pinot Noir page. In this case, I want to get an average of those 5 values above. So I'll start with a parentheses because I'm going to put in 5 different values. And then I hit a plus sign, and then I can hit the up arrow to highlight the first cell in my range. So the plus sign tells Excel, go grab the number in that cell. Then I hit plus again and I tell Excel, next grab the number in cell B3, plus B4, plus B5, and plus B6. That's my range. So I'll close parentheses. Now I want an average, so we have 5 numbers in there. I want a simple average, and I'll divide by 5. Hit enter, and there we go. There's my average. Maybe I'll clean this whole thing up and make it look pretty by making sure that they're the same number of decimal points in each cell. I can do that over here. Mouse over these icons and it says increase or decrease decimal places. So let's do 1 decimal place everywhere. Okay, so my average is 23.8. So MA did a pretty good job. That person nailed it. Okay, so that's one way you'd calculate the average. So let's call this average calculated by Kevin. It's kind of lengthy to do that. Imagine if you had a whole lot of numbers, it'd be very difficult. So again, Excel has a shortcut. I'm highlighting cell B8 right now. If you look up above, you'll see B8 in our little box there telling me which cell is highlighted. If I go over to the right here, look at this f of x. That's a function. That says insert a function in this cell. So if I click on that, Excel gives me some suggestions for what functions I might want to use. Excel's smart enough to say, hey, there's a string of numbers up above. Chances are you either want to sum those or average those or maybe perform some calculations with them. But we want to average them, so perfect. We just click on average. And then Excel brings up this other dialog box that says, tell me the range that you want to average. And it gives you a suggestion, B2 to B7. Well, we only want B2 to B6, right? Because B7 has my calculated average. So I'll change this to B6, hit OK, and Excel puts in the average right there. Nice and easy. A lot easier than typing plus and typing a long formula to add all those cells together and divide by the number of cells. So I'll say this is the average calculated by Excel. So we got it. Nice and easy. Now, say I want to determine how close each of my samplers were to the average. So I want the standard deviation. I want to know the average discrepancy between the value that my samplers got and the average. And so we talked about this a little bit in class, and you use standard deviation. So again, I'm highlighting B9. If I hit the function, it's going to give me a choice. If I look down, a choice or a list of suggested functions from which I can choose. If I look down this list, you see at the bottom, there's standard deviation right there. So in class I used a function called standard deviation .p. You don't necessarily need the .p. You can just highlight standard deviation here and hit OK. So let's do that. Again, it gives us a suggested range and says I'm going to use B2 to B8 to calculate the standard deviation. And now that's not quite right. We need to change that again, don't we, to B2 to B6. Right? Because we just want the standard deviation for the 5 samplers. Excel will then do all the calculations, including calculating an average and calculating the average difference between each sampler and the average. So I hit OK, and there we go. There's my standard deviation. I'll clean it up. Again, up here at the top, I'll mouse over that decrease decimal icon, hit that a few times to decrease, give me a reasonable number of decimals, and then I'm going to label this as the standard deviation calculated by Excel. So there we go, in pretty good shape. So those are just a few functions and a little introduction to Excel. So what have we done? We did a fermentation curve for Pinot Noir, and we input some dates and some formulas. I showed you how to grab that little box on the lower right, drag that down to copy down, and then we input a chart by just saying insert chart, and we clicked on the chart type we wanted. Then we went over to CABSolve and we just input some data, calculated an average and a standard deviation. So I hope that helps. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.